Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. My latest book, Kowabana Volume 12, is now out. Collecting even more of your favourite stories from the show, you can find creepy ghosts, abandoned buildings, haunted shrines, fascinating monsters, and much, much more. You can find that on Amazon right now, and help support the show at the same time. This week, we're looking at some stories to remind you of the real horrors lurking out there. Not the supernatural kind, but rather the very real kind that only humans can produce. First up, a young boy ends up in the hospital and there makes friends with another little girl. They bond over playing games on his Game Boy. But not all may be as it seems at this hospital. Find out why in RPG. One of my favourite childhood games was Saga 2. I still think of it even now, and it always makes me kind of sad. Ever since I was born, I had terrible childhood asthma. I often woke my mother up during the night and asked her to take me to the hospital, and when I started elementary school, my condition got even worse. Of course, I was unable to take part in PE class, and I couldn't even play outside with the other kids either. So, when I was in the 5th grade, things got so bad that I was going to the hospital every single day, and at one point, I had to stay there for 3 whole weeks. I was in a 4-person room, with 2 of the other patients being an elderly woman and an elderly man, while the other patient was a young girl around my age. I was always extremely shy and easily flustered around other people, so I wasn't able to really get along with the other patients in my room. Instead, I just studied or played my Game Boy alone. One of the games I brought from home was Saga 2, and although I'd already beaten it once, I had a lot of free time, so I played it pretty much every day. About a week into my stay, I noticed the girl in the same room as me always watching me when I played my Game Boy. When I looked at her, she quickly looked away. Does she want to play too? I thought, and so I asked her. If you want, I can lend you this. Her eyes lit up. Really? Sure. I'm kinda bored with it now anyway, I said, blushing, and handed the Game Boy to her. But as I expected, she didn't know how to use it, and for a while she just stared at the screen. I decided to play it with her for a bit and teach her the controls. The party consisted of a male hero, Ryota, the same name as me, a female hero, Sayaka, the other girl's name, an ESP girl and a robot, and we named those after the old man and woman in the room with us. After that, we got to know each other better and we chatted not just about the game, but about other stuff as well. We talked about school, our families, the music we liked, the upcoming summer holidays. The time after that just flew by. And next thing I knew, I was getting ready to leave the hospital. While the nurses and the old man and woman in the same room were congratulating me, the girl alone was crying. When I saw that, I almost started crying too. But I managed to hold my tears back, and then I said to the girl, "You can keep this until you get out as well. Let me know when you leave." I left my Game Boy and a copy of Saga 2 for her to play. I thought about going to visit her numerous times after that, but I was too shy and couldn't bring myself to go. A year and a half passed with no contact from her, and soon I was to graduate from elementary school. I wanted to see her at least once before then, so I summoned up the courage to visit her in the hospital. But when I got there, she was no longer there. Her name wasn't on the list at the entrance either. Did she leave a long time ago? I thought, and I went to the nurses' center to ask them about her. She's gone somewhere far away, they said. And although I was in the 6th grade, I wasn't that stupid. One of the nurses started crying, and it was obvious from the atmosphere what had happened. I was shocked. On that note, there's something here that Sayaka-chan said she wanted to give to you, one of the nurses said, handing me something. It was my Game Boy and copy of Saga 2. I took them both and left. As soon as I got home, I sat in my dark room and turned the Game Boy on. The nostalgic opening theme played alongside the loading screen. One of the save slots was the game we played together. It hadn't changed much since that time. I was consumed by both nostalgia and sadness. But there was another save slot that didn't have much time played on it. I wondered if she started again from the beginning and then got bored. I opened it, and then I saw the names of the 4 party members. The nurse is going to kill me. Help. Next, some boys explore a tiny cave in their hometown, only to find something strange inside. A knife sticking out of the ground. They dub it Excalibur, but like the real sword, they're unable to pull it out. What's really going on? Find out in Excalibur. If you like video games, then you've no doubt heard the term Excalibur before. Deep inside a cave, you can find a sword that's stuck in the ground, and only the chosen one can pull it. It goes something like that. But for me, Excalibur is a word that comes with a different memory. This story is a little lengthy, and it doesn't feature any ghosts or curses, so maybe it's not that scary, but please hear me out. It happened during the summer holidays of my final year at high school. I had a good friend who we all called Mike. I mean, you could probably call him my best friend. Anyway, we called him Mike simply because his face looked kind of foreign. That was it. He was the type of guy to just go with the flow, and if something seemed fun, then he'd do it. The high school we went to was a prep school, so I spent my final summer holidays just studying. I studied with Mike until evening at the city library, then we'd chat for a bit and ride home. It went like this day after day, so the holidays were pretty boring. Opposite that library, our study place, there was a rather large shrine. It was on a rather small mountain, but there it sat, right at the top. Of course, the shrine didn't take up the entire mountain, and there were stone steps that led to a wide path so you could walk around the perimeter of the whole mountain. And then, further up, you could find the shrine. Anyway, it was mostly a walking course for all the old people who lived nearby. And just so you don't misunderstand me, it was a really small mountain. I don't know if I should even call it that. The walking path could be done in a full circle in only 30 minutes, but maybe it looked bigger than it actually was because it was so overgrown with weeds and stuff. So, halfway up this walking path, there was a cave. Well, maybe that's exaggerating things, but there was a hole. Only those who really looked for it would notice it, you know? If you walked up the path and then looked up the slope of the mountain, squinting your eyes, then you could see the entrance to the cave hidden behind some tall grass. That was why children couldn't find it. They were too short to see it behind the grass. Even I only learnt of its existence when I was in my final year of junior high. You might think there were some stories attached to this cave like, "My father said you must never go there. That land belongs to the Kami-sama," or something like that. But honestly, most people didn't even know it was there. It was like, a cave? There's a cave there? Huh. So, one day during the summer holidays, Mike and I were studying at the library as usual when we decided to take a break and go to the nearby convenience store to get a snack. "Hey, don't you think it's time?" I suddenly said. "For what?" Mike replied. "To check out that cave. We can't end our summer holidays without checking it out. It's time for a little adventure," I said. "Ah, yeah, for sure," he replied. "Do you want to go now?" I was the one who brought it up, but it was Mike who said that. We were both tired of our boring summer holidays, and because we saw each other every day, we were running out of things to talk about too, so the decision was made in an instant. Mike's house wasn't too far from the library, so first we went there to grab 2 torches. Mike's mother was home and she asked us, "What do you want them for?" I replied truthfully that we were going to explore the cave near the shrine, and then she told us to make sure to take some gloves as well. Even his parents were pretty cool too. Then we finally arrived at the cave. I climbed the mountain slope on my hands and knees, and there it was. The entrance. A strange smell floated out of it. Nah, I'm just kidding. The weather was sunny, so there was absolutely nothing scary about it at all. And we were in an exploring mood, so we were both just joking around. "Captain Mike, we've finally arrived at the destination." Stuff like that, you know? To my credit, I wasn't what you'd call a delinquent these days. I just liked having fun, so we were pretty excited. First, we shone our torches in the hole. The soil inside looked yellow, wet, and kind of shiny. "There's something in there! There's something in there!" Mike screamed, and I joined in. Damn, we didn't prepare well enough. Then we went into the hole. It was only wide enough for one of us to fit at a time, and it wasn't very tall either, so we had to crouch to move through it. Mike went first, and then I followed. The soil in the cave was as clayey as it looked, and although it didn't smell, it was still nice and slimy. Oh yeah, we were in our school uniforms at the time. It was easier to study at the library that way, so we were moving very carefully, so as to not get mud on our clothes. So, you can imagine just how slow we were moving. After we proceeded a little, we were crouch walking, so it had probably taken us about 10 minutes or so. We could no longer see the light from the entrance. Seemed the cave curved quite a bit. Even with our torches out, we could only see 1 or 2 meters ahead of us. The cave was a single path. We chatted as we crouch walked, but our voices oddly didn't echo that much. On the contrary, the clay seemed to dull our voices. We must have been walking for a while when Mike finally screamed, "There's something growing over there!" I couldn't see past his back, but he shuffled forward a little, and I could see something sticking out of the ground between us. Is that a fruit knife? It was. It wasn't growing out of the ground, but rather sticking out of it. The entire blade was stuck in the ground. I could only just barely see the end of it, but judging by the size, it looked like a fruit knife. We both fell silent. What on earth was a fruit knife doing in a place like this? It was Mike who finally broke the silence. "We've finally found it! Excalibur!" I burst out laughing before I could stop myself. The fear I felt was immediately replaced with laughter. "Well then, it's time for the hero Mike to pull out the legendary sword," I said. Mike put his torch on the ground and then grasped the handle with both hands. "Ah!" he screamed as he tried to pull the knife out. Yet it seemed to be firmly stuck in the ground and showed no signs of moving. Does this mean I'm not the chosen one? Well then, that meant I had to try. I grabbed the handle and tried to pull it out, but the results were the same as Mike's. It didn't even make a sound. Just sat there, straight in the ground. Let's level up and come back. That knife was hardly a hindrance, so we decided to ignore it and keep going. There's something in here! There's definitely something in here! The both of us were getting more and more excited. A little further on from the knife, the cave turned in an L shape. We'd taken gentle curves the whole way, but this was the first time we'd seen such a harsh turn. We took the turn and kept walking. "This place is huge," Mike suddenly said. It was true. The area we were now in was larger than before, and now both of us could fit side by side. But what I saw before me made me doubt my own eyes. The area before us was a dead end, but in the ground there were numerous fruit knives sticking up, just like the one we saw earlier. What the hell is this? Looking closer, it appeared the knives had been stuck into the ground at different times as well. Some were clearly very old, while while others looked more recent and shiny. We could no longer pretend that we weren't creeped out by all this. "It's like an Excalibur forest," Mike muttered, but I could tell from his voice that even he didn't feel like joking anymore. "Let's get out of here," I said. Mike immediately turned around and started going back the way we came, but this time I took the lead, with him behind me. Our mood completely drained. We were now frightened, not excited. I just wanted to reach the sunlight as quickly as possible. I feared the silence would drive me insane, however, so I found myself muttering to make some noise. "Jeez, that's so scary," I said to myself, but behind me, Mike remained silent. When we turned the L bend and reached the first fruit knife again, for the first time in my life, a chill ran through my entire body. It had been pulled out. That knife had, until moments ago, been stuck straight into the ground, but now it was lying on the ground. Not only that, but the blade was covered in red liquid, like it had just been used to stab somebody. I couldn't take it anymore. "Crap! This is bad! Someone else is in here with us!" I suddenly screamed. "Someone pulled the knife out! It's covered in blood! Crap! Mike! This isn't funny! Someone else is in here!" "Someone pulled out Excalibur? What do you mean it's covered in blood? Hurry up, move forward a bit. Come on, let's get out of here." Mike and I both lost it, but I was too scared to walk past the bloody knife, so I couldn't go any further. Then he screamed from behind me. "Hey! Get moving! Can't you hear that? Hurry up! Move!" "Hear what?" For a moment, Mike said nothing, but then he screamed again, his voice trembling. "I can hear it! Someone's pulling the knives out behind us! Behind me! Someone's pulling each of those knives out behind us one by one!" As soon as he said that, I realized I could hear it too. The sound of knives sliding out of the ground. "Someone's pulling them out! Go! Quickly! They're gonna kill us!" As soon as Mike screamed, we got down on all fours, no longer caring about our uniforms getting dirty, and crawled towards the exit as fast as we could. "Crap! Crap!" we screamed the whole time, trying to keep our voices low enough that only we could hear them. Honestly, I don't remember anything that happened after that until we reached the exit, but once we got there, I was shocked to see that it was already night. We crawled out and then basically rolled down the slope until we hit the walking path. We were both covered in mud. The brown dirt really stood out on our black pants, but when I shone the torch on Mike, it really hit me that what just happened wasn't a dream. It was reality. There was red blood on his shirt. There was no doubt in my mind that blood was the same blood from that fruit knife we jokingly called Excalibur. After that, I can't say I especially met with any bad luck, nor was I able to see ghosts or anything. And I'm still good friends with Mike too. We're all grown up now, but the only thing that has really changed is that we drink more alcohol than soda now. Something was both behind us and in front of us in that cave. Mike and I still talk about it sometimes, but we have no idea who it could have been that pulled the knife out. Excalibur. It wasn't a legendary sword, just a fruit knife covered in blood. I wonder if it's still there, even now. In this next story, a woman being harassed by a stalker is taken out by a friend for a change of pace. But maybe she really should have stayed at home tonight. Find out why in Stalker. Eiko was a university student, and for several months she'd been receiving silent phone calls, harassing emails, and strange mail from an unknown stalker. All of this was bringing her down so much that one of her friends, Biko, suggested something. "Why don't we get out of here and go out for a bit? Get some fresh air. I know of a mixer that's taking place right now." Eiko had never been to a mixer before, but she was tired of feeling so depressed all the time, and it hit her that maybe having a boyfriend during times like this could ease her worries. So she agreed. The mixer was taking place at a somewhat modern izakaya bar. Everyone there was from the same circle at university. And in front of Eiko sat a handsome, calm, and well-spoken young man. The two hit it off right away, and the more they spoke, the more Eiko grew to like him. With a boyfriend like him, I'd be able to escape this awful reality and talk to him about what's going on, she thought. "If you live nearby, I can drop you off if you want," he said to her when it was time to leave. Eiko looked briefly troubled before replying. "Ah, okay. Thank you." But inside, she was secretly overjoyed. He stopped the car in front of her house. "Let's hang out again sometime," he said. "I'd love to." "Then let's exchange numbers." The distance between the two had somewhat shortened. "Okay, I'll call your phone from mine, so can you tell me your number?" he said. Eiko told him, and then he called her. "Register my number, okay?" he said. Eiko tried to, but her phone said that the number was already registered. It was registered under the name Stalker? Eiko had registered the number all the silent phone calls came from under that name. Finally, a man who works at a leaflet printing company finds himself printing wanted leaflets for someone he actually calls a friend. A friend who has done something very stupid to some very dangerous men. Will they both make it out of this one alive? Be warned, this one gets a little uncomfortable and gross, so if you're the squeamish type, maybe give this one a miss. This one's called Drum Bath. I don't have a sixth sense or anything like that, but when it comes to the true meaning of fear, well, there are things that are far more terrifying than ghosts. A while back, I used to work for a small printing company. They were honestly a terrible company who commonly made things that were against the law, like printing fake stocks, slanderous pamphlets against political groups, and other stuff like that. But it wasn't all bad. One time, an elementary school girl came to see us with her parents. She had a hand-drawn leaflet of her missing cat, and she said she wanted us to print a bunch of them. Our boss went out of his way to tell them that we don't take private requests and they'd be better off printing copies at the convenience store, but the girl insisted. "I'll give you all of the money I've saved," she said, the little devil. What fools, I thought, trusting our shady company to do something that would be of little help to them. But, I don't know. At the time it was like we all came together as one, like we had a sense of duty to help this little girl. We made some changes and then printed out a bunch of leaflets. I even borrowed some pictures of the cat and printed those in colour, instead of using the picture she had drawn. So, on delivery day, the boss lowered his head in apology to the parents. I was scared. Our boss was like an ogre who never backed down from anything, and at first, I was too stupid to understand why he was lowering his head. But I think everybody else realized. "I'm terribly sorry. I've done something I shouldn't have as a professional. I've lost your original draft," he said. What on earth is he saying? I thought. But what he said after that numbed me. "I offer you my apologies, of course, but I have prepared a replacement. At no cost to you, naturally. As I have breached our contract, I'll also help you distribute the leaflets as part of the penalty." Of course, he didn't actually lose it. It was on the wall in the workroom the entire time. I could hardly believe him, but either way, we didn't have any work at the time, so maybe he was bored. Oh, they found the cat. She was being fed by an old lady who lived in an apartment nearby. She contacted them thanks to the leaflets. Anyway, it was a company full of fools who was on the verge of bankruptcy. Sorry, I got a little off track there. So here's the scary story. Sorry that went on for so long. Well, you know what they say. It's better for a man to last a long time, right? Sorry. At the time, some thug cheated some office somewhere out of some money. It's a pretty common story. And so, we got a job to distribute leaflets to brothels, saunas, yakiniku restaurants, love hotels, and other such places. Normally, you'd use detectives to find someone like that and drive them into a corner. But this time, they just wanted to throw people at the problem. Like, they wanted to test the loyalty of those beneath him. I personally didn't care what happened though, as long as we got paid. But what really sucked was that this guy was a buddy of mine from Pachinko. I even knew where he lived and his contact details. When they showed me the photos, I was like, oh crap. It was like the angel and devil on my shoulder were fighting. All I had to do was say the word and it was over. I could tell them his phone number and address, and it would be over just like that. I'd likely even get a bonus, the little devil was telling me. But then the angel was like, no, you're a man, and even if you've only known him a short time, he's still your friend. He even bought you food. They were placing the order as all this was going around in my head, but there was no regret. All I could think was, I don't know a thing. But still, it later came to light that it wasn't a lie that we were friends. Seemed he also thought of me as a friend too, unfortunately. A day or two later, he came to my house. He was banging loudly on the door, and it honestly annoyed me, so I got up and opened it, and there he stood, like a big gorilla. By this point, he honestly was a gorilla. He explained the situation to me, but all I wanted was for him to leave. It wasn't like I spoke gorilla either. But joking aside, he wanted to tell me everything, so he came inside. The reason for everything was incredibly common. He was in debt. Now, if he had a sick sister and needed to pay for her hospital bills or something, I would have felt bad for him. But he just liked spending time with women. He was so desperate that he kept spending money at high-class clubs and was getting in more and more debt. There was no point in telling me now that he'd been fooled by some woman or whatever. But most of all, I just wanted him to leave right away. I didn't think he was going to swindle me, but just in case, I still wanted him to go. Who was it that came up with the saying, "A drowning man will clutch at straw"? The gorilla grabbed me with incredible strength and threatened to name me an accomplice if I tried to throw him out. I had no idea what to do. Looking back on it now, I probably should have just handed him over to some brutes, or, if I couldn't do that, like, talk to my boss or something. But instead, I hid him. I lost my little toe because of it as well, but that's a story for later. The next few days were pretty tough on me mentally. During the day, I was printing Gorilla's face at work. The brutes would tell me to put new information on the leaflets, and one after the other we kept printing new ones. Then, when I returned to my apartment at night, exhausted, Gorilla was there. My entire life was just full of him. What kind of zoo was this? At first he was calm, as though he felt some sort of guilt even though he was nothing more than a wild animal. Soon, however, he got bored of staying inside and kept ordering more and more things. He wanted to drink cola. He wanted me to buy some magazines. He wanted to eat ramen, etc. I really just wanted him to leave. Anyway, you can probably tell from this flow of events that Gorilla was eventually captured by a bunch of scary zookeepers with tattoos on their backs. One day, I returned home, and the moment I opened the front door, suddenly something pulled me inside. Just yanked me right in. I had no idea what was going on, but suddenly some tape was placed over my mouth, and then my hands and feet were tied with plastic packing string. It really hurt when it cut into your skin. It was like you had a fever or something, right? They tied my hands and feet together with the same piece of string, and then rolled me along the floor. They really seemed to know what they were doing. I was bound and unable to move before I even had the chance to fight back. A terrible, terrible feeling washed over me, but I couldn't see Gorilla, and that worried me. A man who looked like the person in charge looked at me as I rolled on the floor, and then started talking. His voice was oddly high-pitched and rang in my ears with strange pronunciation. Was this what demons sounded like? Are you his friend? I shook my head wildly. It thumped painfully on the floor, but this wasn't the time to be worrying about that. This is your apartment, right? If you're not his friend, then what are you? I tried to explain, but my mouth was covered in tape, so nothing came out. It seemed my existence was a mystery to them. All right, let's get out of here, the man with the high-pitched voice instructed the others. They put me in a black windowless van and then covered my eyes with a towel. I don't know how long it took, but I think we drove for about an hour. They took me out of the van, walked me somewhere, took the towel off my head, and then I saw Gorilla in front of me, naked. He was lying on a concrete floor, groaning in pain. Every now and then he coughed, but he seemed to be only vaguely conscious. His face was swollen, and his nose and cheeks appeared to be in the same position. His body was covered in black and blue spots as well. They probably beat him so much he was bleeding internally as well. He didn't seem to notice I was there. They ripped the tape from my mouth, and then the man with the high-pitched voice asked me a question. Hey, how do you know this guy? I knew very well that if I gave him the wrong answer, I'd end up just like Gorilla. I told them I knew him from Pachinko, and that was why he was staying at my place. The man looked like he wasn't really listening to me. Really? You're not lying so you don't end up like him, are you? I shook my head violently. We're Pachinko friends, sure, and we've gone out to eat and such, but we never stole any money together. But that statement backfired. How did you know he stole money? Realizing I had dug my own grave, I shut up. I'd spent several days with him by this point, so I should have known what type of guys were after him, right? But I was also an employee of the company printing the leaflets looking for him, so I knew even more than that. That sense of guilt made me keep my mouth shut. Oh well. Hey, the man with the high-pitched voice said to another man nearby, and they started prepping something. They rolled something in and then placed it near Gorilla. It was a steel drum. No way. Are they going to put him in there and fill it with concrete? I thought naively. It would have been better if they did do that, really. 4 men lifted Gorilla into the drum. He didn't fight back at all and slipped right in. All he did was groan in pain. Let me tell you something good. The reason we found you was because of him. He called a call girl. Hilarious, right? The fool came right to us. I was disgusted by how brazen Gorilla was, and got angry at how careless he was too. What on earth is he doing while on the run? I thought. I've had enough of this small change. He's gotta pay. The big problem here is that he's been playing us for suckers. The moment you take us too lightly, it's over for you. Yeah, I don't care who you are. I want to know if you've been making fun of us with this guy. How are you going to prove that you never stole any money from us? We're going to leave you here with him for a bit. Then, I'll ask you just one more time, okay? I don't know how long it's going to take, but think of your answer very carefully. Although, personally, I do sympathize with you. The man with the high-pitched voice said without pause. Then, he called out to another man nearby, and they both left. From the bottom of my heart, I was shaken. They had forced me to sit upright in a chair that I was tied to. 2 men lifted me and then sat me right in front of Gorilla's drum. His face was only 50 centimeters away from mine. What kind of unfortunate date was this? Gorilla kept groaning in pain. I didn't feel like resisting either. I just prayed they'd let me go as soon as possible. 5 men were doing something around us. I tried convincing myself it wasn't just my imagination, that they didn't look very happy with what they were doing. They put a thick hose into the drum. Yeah, it was about the same thickness as a 500 milliliter can of cola. Of course, I started to freak out. Oh no, they really are going to fill it with concrete. The hose was connected to a strange container. You know those big plastic containers that you store clothes or other small items in? It was a container like that with long feet on it that reached roughly our head height. What the hell is that? I thought, cowering in fear. The men appeared to have finished what they were doing and gave one final check before looking at me. Then they said something unexpected. Hey, if it gets to be too much, just close your eyes. You can do this, man. What on earth was about to happen? And why were they saying something so nice to me? Gorilla was in the drum right in front of me. Well, we're going now. Good luck, they said, pulling a lever attached to the caster before leaving the room. Now we were alone, not knowing where we were or what was in the container. I heard something hard drop on the concrete, and immediately after, something started to flow from the container. Gorilla stopped groaning and instead started to scream as he struggled to move. At first, I didn't know what was filling the drum, as the hose had been pushed down to the bottom of it. But slowly, as the drum filled up, I realized what it was. Crabs. The drum was filling with crabs of all sizes, from the size of a fingernail to the size of a fist. At first, I had no idea why. Why crabs? I couldn't help but imagine them making a miso soup with Gorilla and the crabs as ingredients. But when Gorilla started writhing and screamed in terror, I suddenly understood the real horror that was taking place only 50 centimeters in front of my face. Hey, help! They're getting inside me! Gorilla was covered in sweat and screaming so loud for my help that it almost deafened me. The crabs were eating his flesh and going inside his body. He couldn't move, and yet he kept screaming about pain in his legs and his butt and other body parts. That's enough. I don't want to imagine it any further. But Gorilla kept screaming right in front of me, a voice that sounded almost inhuman. He screamed for hours. No, I don't know. I had no idea how much time really passed. He was foaming at the mouth and blood coming out of his eyes and ears, but still, he kept screaming. His face went red, then blue, and as he spat up blood like a faucet, I realized where they were going next. They reached his face and started making strange sounds as they grabbed at his mouth and eyes. Gorilla continued screaming, shaking his head and trying to hit it against the drum, but the crabs wouldn't let him. I couldn't watch any longer, but there was nothing else I could do. His body twisted and I tried slamming my chair against the drum, but the combined weight inside was too much to even budge it. My ears went numb from all his screams, and It finally became hard to listen to anything. Finally, he let out a small cough and then went silent. The rustling in the drum continued. Gorilla twitched, but it was hard to tell if it was him or the crabs. The sound of it all made me want to throw up. I don't know if hell exists, but if it did, it had to be something like that. They were still all over him. Then his body tilted and crabs overflowed from the can, changing their target to me. I screamed. They kept falling at my feet and clinging to me. First it tickled, then it itched. I twisted in my chair, but they kept coming. Soon I felt a pain in my little finger and realized they'd reached there too. I'd honestly rather they attacked me with a drill or something. They kept attacking me. I wet myself, but still they didn't stop. I screamed, even though it had no meaning, but still, I screamed. I was losing it. No, I'd already lost it. I heard a high-pitched voice, some men screaming, and then the crabs were brushed away. Relieved, I heard a buzzing near my head, and then I passed out. Hey, are you still alive? Hey! Someone was slapping my cheek. The man with the high-pitched voice before me looked like both an angel and a god. My little toe ached. I cried tears of happiness that was the only thing I felt. Are you awake? He asked again. I answered with barely a voice. Answer my question. Are you his friend? He pointed to the drum. I shook my head so hard it almost twisted off, choking on snot and tears, and said that I wasn't. The man and his buddies were convinced, and they untied me. I wasn't able to stand, but from the pain in my little toe, I could tell everything was still there. They then stuffed me back in the van and dropped me off back home. For the next week, I was unable to eat or even go outside. I don't know why, but my boss came to see me and dropped off a brown envelope. It was full of cash. Ghosts are cute. For me, there's nothing more terrifying on this planet than a drum full of crabs. A huge thank you and shout out to this week's Cummy tier members, Christina, Giovanni, and Estash. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Kowabana Volume 12, out on Amazon right now, and check out our newly revamped merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.